FBI director, installing the longtime Donald Trump loyalist to oversee the country's top law enforcement agency. Three buses have exploded south of Tel Aviv in a suspected terror attack, Israeli Defense Forces say. They add it is increasing their activity in the occupied West Bank, and they have blocked entry to certain areas there. India's drug makers are calling for bilateral talks with the US to avert Donald Trump's proposed 25% tariff on pharmaceutical imports. Trump's tariff proposal knocked Indian drug makers' stocks on Wednesday. An American rapper, Eminem, is all set to perform in India for the first time. He will reportedly perform in Mumbai this June. Well, our top story, the US Senate has confirmed Kash Patel as the next FBI director, handing oversight of the nation's premier law enforcement agency to an official who has declined to explicitly say whether he would use his position to pursue Donald Trump's political opponents. Notably, at his confirmation hearing, Kash Patel refused to commit that he would not use his position to investigate officials he portrayed as Trump's adversaries in his book, and affirmed that he believed the FBI was answerable to the Justice Department and ultimately the White House. But Patel will inherit an FBI gripped by turmoil, as the Justice Department over the past month has forced out a group of senior bureau officials and made a highly unusual demand for the names of thousands of agents who participated in these investigations that were related to the US Capitol riot attack on the 6th of January back in 2021. By the way, you must note that when Trump actually tapped Kash Patel last year, Democrats largely believed it would lead to a backlash that would sink his nomination. But no resistance ever materialized, in part because Kash Patel was less controversial than some of Trump's other nominees, such as Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary. With that, let's turn our attention now to Israel, where police reported a series of explosions on buses in central Israel in what they said appeared to be a militant attack. No injuries were reported, fortunately, but police rushed forces to the scene south of Tel Aviv as they searched for suspects. Police say bomb disposal units were searching for additional bombs, but analysts meanwhile argue that elements within the Israeli government are itching to return to war in an effort to eliminate Hamas, even though that goal is not really attainable. And speaking of Hamas, one of the 4 bodies returned by Hamas to Israel on Thursday is not that of Shiri Bibas. Israeli military has said, calling it a violation of utmost severity of a ceasefire deal that was already precarious. The Israeli military confirmed that 2 of the bodies belong to Bibas' children, Ariel and Kafir, in the early hours today. However, it added during the identification process, they were determined that the additional body received is not that of Shiri Bibas, and no match was found for any other hostage. They have said clearly this is an anonymous, unidentified body. Meanwhile, let's turn our attention now to Ukraine, where President Volodymyr Zelensky met with US President Trump's special envoy in Kyiv, a day after a public feud between the Ukrainian and American leaders threatened to derail diplomatic efforts towards peace talks that are happening. But the meeting with Keith Kellogg, who's the special envoy to Ukraine and Russia, was meant to discuss paths to ending the war that would safeguard Ukraine's interests. There was also hope that it might help diffuse tensions between Washington and Kyiv after Trump labeled Zelensky a dictator and the Ukrainian president accused him of echoing Russian propaganda. But whether any progress was made remains unclear, because a news conference scheduled for after the meeting was cancelled at the request of the United States, according to Mr. Zelensky's office, although Mr. Kellogg and the Ukrainian leader appeared together for photos, as you can see on the left side of your screens. For a quick comment on the matter and for further clarity, we have with us Ray Locker at the moment. Ray, as always, thanks so much for making time for us. Despite the high stakes of this meeting, the scheduled press conference was abruptly cancelled. What message does this send, Ray, about the effectiveness of the discussions? And does it actually signal a lack of transparency?
Well, it definitely signals a lack of transparency. I mean, if they wanted to reveal what they talked about, they would have had the news conference. Kellogg has been seen as relatively supportive of Ukraine among the Trump team that is basically all on Russia's side. If you notice, Kellogg was not invited to the Saudi Arabia talks between U.S. and Russian diplomats, in part because I think the Russians thought he was too antagonistic. So it was natural that he would meet with Zelensky, and we'll see what happens in the next few days.
Ray, how significant is the role of Keith Kellogg in navigating this crisis, and what does it actually say about America's long-term strategy in Ukraine, considering what Trump has just said about 24 hours ago about Zelensky?
Well, I mean, Kellogg is a bit player in this team. He's an important guy. He has experience. He was a lieutenant general in the Army. He knows what he's talking about. But Trump's going to do what Trump wants. No one's telling him what to do. He's not listening to anybody other than himself or Vladimir Putin. So, again, Zelensky and Ukraine need to be very nervous about what the next steps are going to be.
Indeed, but with both sides seemingly at odds as we speak, how can they find common ground when trust appears to be at an all-time low?
Well, it's a challenge. I mean, if you're Zelensky, what do you do? I mean, you've seen what Trump has been saying. He's calling you a dictator. He wants you basically to give up. He's accusing Ukraine of having been invaded. They started a war because they let Russia invade them. It's hard to get around that. And so what Zelensky needs to do is build up his alliances in Europe and keep working on the people in the U.S. Congress, including Republicans who have been relatively emboldened to say that they don't agree with Trump on this issue.
Well, Ray, as always, thanks so much for joining us with your comments. We will, of course, see how this unfolds.
Thank you.
Well, as we were mentioning, within 24 hours, the growing feud between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky has escalated to new heights, with Trump calling Zelensky a dictator. If there were any lingering doubts about Donald Trump's view of the Ukraine war and America's support of Kyiv's fight against Russia, he put them to risk in stark terms. He said Zelensky wanted to keep the gravy train of foreign aid running a day after he appeared to blame Ukraine, not Russia, for starting the war. But this report explains the implication of Trump flipping the script on Washington's policy towards Kyiv. Listen in.
Modestly successful comedian. He refuses to have elections, is low in a dictator without elections. He's not going to have a country left. Got to move.
These words spoken by the US President Donald Trump are not aimed at one of Washington's adversaries. Instead, Zelensky, one of the US allies, finds himself at the end of the Trump barrel. The sharp comments were in response to the Ukrainian president's remark that goes like this.
Президент Трамп з великою повагою до нього відносимося як до лідера народу, який ми дуже поважаємо, американський народ, який нас постійно підтримує. На жаль, живе в цьому дезінформаційному просторі.
The same war of words erupted after the Russia-US talks in Riyadh this week. Trump falsely blamed Zelensky for starting the Ukraine war. This blatant denial of the truth shocked even some Republicans back in the United States. International affairs experts have said that Trump has upended US's foreign policy in just a few days. Wars force people to pick a side, and Trump seems to be cozying up to Vladimir Putin. Zelensky has found support in European and UK allies, but Ukraine's largest supplier of weapons, the United States, seems to be swiftly gravitating towards Kremlin's rhetoric on the war. It's been almost 3 years of Russia's invasion, and Trump's attacks are playing into one of Moscow's rationales for the war, that the elected Ukrainian leader was illegitimate. The US has initiated talks on achieving peace in the region. This Trump-Zelensky public spat risks derailing those efforts, or worse, make matters more complicated. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
Meanwhile, in terms of advances, Russian forces have taken back more than 800 square kilometers of territory from Ukraine in the Kursk region of western Russia. That's about 64% of the total taken by Ukraine since an incursion began last year. This is what a top Russian general has said on record. Meanwhile, in other crucial news, a day after US President Donald Trump flagged funding by US aid to allegedly influence elections in India, the BJP lashed out at the Congress party for allegedly seeking foreign interference to stop Narendra Modi from coming to power back in 2014 and subsequently funding anti-Modi narratives. But I must inform you, in terms of the rebuttal from the Congress, they have clearly rubbished the BJP's claims. Though the BJP had questioned if the funds were used for political interference, the Congress party has clearly said this is rubbish. Meanwhile, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has called on South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and conveyed the warm greetings of our Prime Minister. Now, Dr. Jaishankar is in Johannesburg on a two-day visit to South Africa to participate in the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting, and he's assured India's support for South Africa's G20 priorities too. But in terms of the sidelines of the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting, Dr. Jaishankar interacted with several world leaders. This actually includes Sergei Lavrov, who's Russia's foreign minister, the Chinese foreign minister Wang Yi, and Saudi foreign minister Faisal bin Farhan. In fact, he also met his counterparts from Singapore, Brazil, and Ethiopia and discussed with them global developments and ways to enhance bilateral ties. News and updates continue in a moment, right after this very short break. Don't go anywhere.
You mentioned Shah Rukh Khan. You've had interesting pairings with Shah Rukh Khan. You've had interesting movies with Shah Rukh Khan.
I was having dinner, so I got up from my table, I went to his table and I told him that you are a very fine actor. Why don't you join films? This is my number. If you want to, you can call me.
Rekha in Khoon Bari Mang, and that's a highly feminist film. How did it really come? There were several other great actors at that time.
And if Rekha would have said no, I would not have made that film.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
Kumbh is the flow of the rivers, the direction of the stars, and the memory of the urn full of nectar. I'm here to tell you the story of Kumbh. Watch Mahakumbh Tales with me, Amish Tripathi, only on NDTV.
Very, very warm welcome to you all for this NDTV Prophet Conclave, which is themed on Viksit Bharat.
American president talks about making America great again, and when Prime Minister Modi talks about Viksit Bharat, in a way is talking about making India great again.
India needs to diversify its sources of capital.
Deployment of the grassroots level will be done by manufacturing.
You can't truly become a developed nation unless we take every segment of the society in our economic development journey. This is also another element of blueprint for Viksit Bharat.
The NDTV Prophet Conclave 2025, the blueprint for Viksit Bharat, only on the NDTV network.
Mahakumbh, the festival of faith, the world's biggest spiritual festival. The divine dip at the spiritual Sangam, a sacred confluence of faith, culture and heritage. NDTV's mega coverage of the Mega Fest. NDTV at Mahakumbh 2025.
Very, very warm welcome to you all for this NDTV Prophet Conclave, which is themed on Viksit Bharat.
American president talks about making America great again, and when Prime Minister Modi talks about Viksit Bharat, in a way is talking about making India great again.
India needs to diversify its sources of capital.
Deployment of the grassroots level will be done by manufacturing.
You can't truly become a developed nation unless we take every segment of the society in our economic development journey. This is also another element of blueprint for Viksit Bharat.
The NDTV Prophet Conclave 2025, the blueprint for Viksit Bharat, only on the NDTV network.
Welcome back. Tesla is set to make its long-awaited entry into India by shipping a few thousand cars to a port near Mumbai in the coming months, marking its long-awaited debut in the world's most populous country. The US carmaker plans to start selling these cars in 3 major cities. But Mugdha Mishra is with us to give us the lowdown. Mugdha, tell us everything we need to know. We're actually hearing that Tesla's business in India is likely to be import-only for now?
Well, yes, because the structure for manufacturing that was proposed earlier, where the companies had to spend some 4,150 crores and they were allowed to import 8,000 cars with lower duties, being reworked because I think the negotiation between India and US are taking that discussion in that direction. But what we are hearing and what sources tell us that the Teslas will definitely be available in India very soon. It's expected by the end of the 3rd quarter of this year, or in the 3rd quarter of this year, we will see Teslas coming to India and being sold. And the tariff structure, the 110% import duty structure, that is also currently being negotiated. I think the Tesla's plans became pretty clear once we saw the job postings happening, and after the PM met Elon Musk, and the speed of these negotiations are happening quite rapidly. We have seen that since the time Elon Musk met Mr. PM, we have seen slews of news coming on. But now it's pretty sure that very soon we'll see the cars getting imported to India. And then let's see whether they start manufacturing in India or not, because that can become a bit of a problem, because we saw Donald Trump being a little upset with Tesla's plan to start manufacturing. Let's hope that discussion goes ahead and India is able to convince US that it's not unfair to them if Tesla manufactures here.
Mugdha, thanks so much for joining us with that update. So if you are looking to be a Tesla owner, car sales would commence in Mumbai, Delhi and Bangalore by Q3, as Mugdha Mishra is reporting. Meanwhile, Mohammad Shami's 5-wicket haul after a long injury layoff and Shubman Gill's 8th unbeaten ODI 100 headlined India's 6-wicket win versus Bangladesh. But India was made to work hard for this win, particularly overcome a pitch that got increasingly slow as India batted. But here are the highlights for you.
India began their Champions Trophy campaign showing signs of their ominous form. Mohammad Shami struck in the opening over, followed by Harshit Rana in the next, sending the Bangla top order packing. Bangladesh were in all sorts when Shami picked out Mehdi Hassan Miraz. When Akshar Patel struck in successive balls in the 9th over, the Tigers were tottering at 35 for 5. Tauhid Hriday and Zakir Ali avoided a complete blowout. This was the highest sixth-wicket partnership versus India in ODIs. The duo of Zakir and Hriday brought Bangladesh back into the game with a 154-run stand. Tauhid Hriday showed real character and resilience to get to 100 in 114 balls. Bangladesh were bowled out for 228. Mohammad Shami, the star for India, having picked up 5 wickets for 53 runs. India started in the fifth gear with Gill and Sharma taking off, but the captain was gone after a 36-ball 41. Virat Kohli took India past the 100-run mark but was done in by leg spinner Rishad Hussain. Kohli failing to convert a good start. Predictor still favoured the men in blue, but the impact of leg spin was real. Hussain striking again. Having scored a half-century, India needed Gill to take control. Shubman Gill and KL Rahul forged a brilliant unbeaten partnership of 87 runs to take India over the finish line. Gill stood tall, anchored one end to get a second consecutive 100, 8th in ODI cricket. India finished with a 6-wicket win against Bangladesh.
Well, let's switch tracks now. A week after Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Washington, D.C., Gauri Dwivedi spoke to Professor Paul Gompers and Professor Vikram Gandhi from Harvard Business School about the future of the India-US ties and how trade and tech are likely to shape this relationship. Here's a snippet for you.
Professor Gompers, Professor Gandhi, thank you so much for speaking to me on NDTV. Let me start first by asking in terms of the big thing when you see, we're talking at a time when there's been an important meeting that has taken place between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. In your assessment, how do you see the larger India-US relationship going? It's not just about the politics aspect of it. I think economy and trade is going to be really central to this relationship going forward. Your thoughts on that, sir?
Yes, I think the US-India relationship from an India perspective, if I kind of view that lens, is an extremely important one. I would say it's right up there, and for a variety of reasons. So one is on technology flow, like you said, and we can get into that more. The second is on capital flows. I mean, ultimately, India does need more capital to grow and sustain its economy. It's the highest growth large economy, but it is capital deficient. And so capital flows is the second one. Talent flows is the third one. So there's a huge number of areas where US-India collaboration, I think, is actually, underperforming, and therefore there's massive upside opportunity to kind of take it to the next step.
Professor Gompers, if you were to talk, about the technology aspect of it and also the kind of opportunities it throws up, the one very interesting thing this meeting of the two heads of state was the focus on technology, whether it is biotech, whether it is semiconductors, whether it is defense. How do you see that helping and really becoming a catalyst for India when it comes to starting the ecosystem for all these technologies?
Yeah, so if we look at the last decade, one of the global success stories in sort of startups is clearly India. It's transition to an economy in which many of the best and brightest want to go, they want to start something, they want to build a national champion. And the last decade was really driven by companies focused on doing things in the Indian market. It's a huge market. You can build a multi-billion-dollar unicorn success by focusing on India. But I think that your question sort of is the right one, because if we look going forward, I think over the next decade, we're going to see almost as many global success stories.
And finally, American rapper Eminem is all set to perform in India for the first time. According to multiple reports, the rap legend will take the stage in Mumbai in June as part of his upcoming concert tour. And he's going to be in LA, New York, Chicago before that. Then he heads to London, Paris and Amsterdam before reportedly coming to India to Mumbai. Thank you for investing your time and watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest updates for you. Do stay tuned.
You mentioned Shah Rukh Khan. You've had interesting pairings with Shah Rukh Khan. You've had interesting movies with Shah Rukh Khan.
I was having dinner, so I got up from my table, I went to his table and I told him that you are a very fine actor. Why don't you join films? This is my number. If you want to, you can call me.
Rekha in Khoon Bari Mang, and that's a highly feminist film. How did it really come? There were several other great actors at that time.
And if Rekha would have said no, I would have not made that film.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
Kumbh is the flow of the rivers, the direction of the stars, and the memory of the urn full of nectar. I'm here to tell you the story of Kumbh. Watch Mahakumbh Tales with me, Amish Tripathi, only on NDTV.